Time for the Opinions Roundtable. Buckle up, y'all. So let's go to the opinion side of the Washington Post, where we will find Washington Post associate editor and columnist Ruth Marcus and Washington Post contributing columnist Hugh Hewitt. Ruth, Hugh, welcome back to First Look.
I'm buckled up. Thanks.
All right. This is to both of you. We'll start. We are 4 days out from Election Day. Who's going to win and why? Hugh, you go first.
I don't know. I do know that the major stories of this morning help Donald Trump. There are two. The jobs report just dropped. It was supposed to be 112,000 jobs created in October. It's only 12,000 jobs. Headline at the Washington Post, headline at the Wall Street Journal. Disaster for Kamala Harris. Absolute disaster because it refocuses on the economy, the number one issue in America, and on immigration, the number two issue in America, not on abortion, the number three issue in America. The second big issue is that today, Iran threatened another strike on Israel. Israel, I think, will act preemptively to stop that this time. So we have a massive war in Ukraine, another strike on Israel. 7 Israelis were killed yesterday by Hezbollah missiles, and a Jewish man in Chicago was attacked by an illegal immigrant shouting Allah Akbar, and they finally got him charged after a week of outrage. The environment is good for Trump, but every single prediction I've made for about 10 years has been wrong, so I don't make predictions anymore.
So,
one thing first, though, on the jobs, Hugh, you can't talk about those numbers and not point out that even the Labor Department points out that there were 2 hurricanes and a Boeing strike that played into the 12,000 job creation number. But I just leave that there. Ruth, you go.
I agree with the first sentence that Hugh said. I don't know either. I disagree with everything else. First of all, I disagree on the impact of the jobs report. For one thing, millions and millions of people have voted early. Their vote can't be changed by this. And for people who haven't voted, to the extent which is significant that the economy is an important factor in their decision making, I think their views of the economy are pretty baked in at this point and aren't going to be affected by one jobs report, which has which, while disappointing, has the explanation that you provided earlier, Jonathan. And I think that the scary things that are going on between Israel and Iran are similarly not affecting voters. If I could choose to be put in a medically induced coma for the next 4 days, that's what I would do, because I can't take it anymore. I can't take any more polls. I'm sorry, my husband looking at the polls and making me crazy because I tell him not to tell me and then he just keeps going. This is the most Hugh talked about having been wrong for umpty years. We've all gotten elections wrong in the past, but this is the most undecided, the most razor's edge, scalpel's edge election of our lifetime. And we should just stop talking about who's going to win because we don't know.
That is absolutely correct. We have no idea. And luckily, most people get to sit at home and watch and fret on their sofas. I'm going to be at PBS on camera trying to hold it together no matter what happens. So speaking of the atmosphere that you mentioned, Hugh, Donald Trump last night during an event in Arizona on stage with Tucker Carlson, he called Liz Cheney, former Congresswoman, Republican Congresswoman who has endorsed Vice President Harris, he called her a war hawk and then said, and I'm quoting, "Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face." Hugh, why are threats of violence or violent imagery such a prominent feature of his campaign, especially in these closing days?
I think because he was shot in the head, Jonathan. I think the reason he is talking about violence against candidates is because he was shot in the head and a man sat in a nest, a gun nest at Mar-a-Lago, I think it was Mar-a-Lago, maybe it was the other one, Doral, trying to kill him. So we've had 2 assassination attempts in this election cycle. And yet they continue to use, and they include my friend Liz, fascist talk, the sort of incendiary rhetoric that leads to getting a presidential candidate shot in the head. So I think it is unfortunate that he went that far, but I also believe, I think I understand how someone who's been shot at and hit once has got it on his mind. And I think it's deplorable that we're calling a regular Republican who's not, my kind of Republican. I'm a Rob Portman, Gerald Ford Republican, a fascist. He's not a fascist. It's stupid. It's crazy and it's incendiary and it should stop everywhere. And I wish that Kamala Harris would have asked for that months ago.
Ruth, before I give you a chance to answer, I should point out that Donald Trump's violent rhetoric predates the two assassination attempts. Also, it's not just, it's his former chief of staff, Marine General Kelly, who called him a fascist, his former Joint Chiefs of Staff, who has issued major dire warnings about his former boss. So this isn't just coming out of nowhere, and it's not the fault of Democrats or the vice president. Ruth, your reaction to what Donald Trump said in Arizona?
This kind of rhetoric is completely unacceptable, and it's dangerous. And as Hugh points out, and I think acknowledges, the person who should most understand the dangerousness of this rhetoric and has thrown it back and actually unfairly blamed Democrats for the assassination attempts, which are lamentable, and thank goodness they didn't succeed, is Donald Trump. No one should use language like this, Democrat or Republican. Nobody who is on the precipice of regaining the presidency potentially should use language like that about his opponents. And as you point out, Jonathan, there's a difference between name calling, which we have, and inciting, invoking the prospect of violence. That's a very scary thing. Republicans are very quick to call out Democrats when that happens. They should call out their own when the ex-president does it.
Ruth, let me stick with you, because is it me, or does it seem like this week Donald Trump is laying the groundwork for contesting the election by complaining that cheating was taking place in Pennsylvania by suing Bucks County for alleged irregularities? And this is on top of his continual assertion that if he loses, it's because of cheating.
Yeah, that's what he's been laying the groundwork for this, just not in the last week, but in the last umpty-ump months. No election can be fair in Donald Trump's mind, unless Donald Trump wins it. And I think we are going to see him both rev up his supporters to contest elections outside of courtrooms and go to every courtroom he can in America where it's relevant to make whatever arguments he can, no matter how far-fetched. We saw
Jonathan,
I've got to last time, but it didn't work out this time. It may not work. That may not happen this time. And now I'll let you go, Hugh.
Well, I've just got to say, we're news people, even though we're at the opinion section. It's got to be reported. Bucks County was reversed by the court and instructed to open up extra days because they violated the law and told people to go home. So that lawsuit was brought by the Republican National Committee, and it was successful. The Supreme Court ruled that Glenn Youngkin was successful. We are news people, even though we have opinions, and we have to report the whole story if we bring up part of the story. So yes, he's upset about Bucks County, but he was right, and he won in court. That's the story.
I'll let you keep going, Jonathan.
No, I don't appreciate being lectured about reporting when, Hugh, many times you come here saying lots of things that aren't.
I won't come back, Jonathan. I'm done.
What?
I'm done. This is the most unfair election ad I have ever been a part of. You guys are working. That's fine. I'm done.
So, Ruth, you wrote a column this week ending with this line, and actually, I think this is perfect. We're going to put it on the screen. You wrote, "You want to know the stakes of this election? Not only democracy, but decency." Talk more about that, Ruth.
Okay, collecting myself.
Oh, Ruth froze. Ruth is frozen. So hang in there, everyone. We're going to see if we can try to get Ruth back to this very we're gonna get Ruth back in a moment. This is First Look, Washington Post Live's nonstop shop for news and analysis, and Ruth is back. So I'm going to read that quote back again from your column, Ruth, where you wrote, "You want to know the stakes of this election? Not only democracy, but decency." Okay, we lost her again. Everybody, if you've been watching First Look, you know that these conversations can be interesting, contentious. You just saw Hugh Hewitt leave the conversation, which is lamentable, unfortunate. It is what it is. I am Jonathan Capehart. I want to thank you all very much for joining us on First Look. For more of these important conversations, please sign up for a Washington Post subscription. You can get a free trial by going to washingtonpost.com/live.